Hello people, I am Sky Demolisher and welcome to another From the Collection Fridays, a series where I take something from my collection and show it to you, my viewers. And this week it is my Power of the Primes Jazz, or as Prime would have said in the first Bay film, I think. What was it? My second lieutenant, designation Jazz. Now, this particular mould I think might have been based off a Wheeljack one, because his alt mode looks a lot more like Wheeljack's than it does Jazz's. Now Jazz was a Porsche Carrera, I believe, or Porsche Carrera, in the 1984 TV series. But a similar paint job, white, dominantly white, but with these blue and red racing stripes, the number 4 Autobot insignia on the front. So, funnily enough, I actually think this particular alt mode was more suited to, I believe his name was Hurricane, from the G1.5 or early G2 line. I think from a team that were called the Accelerators, but I can't quite remember. All I do remember is that their foes were the Predators, the Jets, that had those neon plastic and light piping gimmicks. I would say that they were actually some of the last figures to actually come out with good spring-loaded weapons, and pretty handy little yellow missiles that would get lost quite easily. He does come with 2 accessories, the Prime Armor, let's see if I can get that to focus, Prime Armor, but it can also be used as a fist for the larger combiners from the Combiner Wars line, and a gun that is very similar to the original Jazz's. And as you can see underneath, you can see his head. This might actually work a bit better for getting it in focus, hopefully. Yeah, so you can see that he does actually have a mouth, but because of how, I would say because of how small it is, the detail gets a bit lost there, and he ends up looking like he's got a beak or a faceplate like Optimus Prime does. The handy thing with these particular figures, of course, is that their parts are sort of made to pop off, so if you put too much force on the leg or whatever, they'll just pop out of the ball joint, and you won't have to worry about snapping it like we did with the original early Transformers. I do like that they've got the press down foot here, very much like what we had with the original figures. The issue with this, of course, if you don't have the leg open, you see how it joins here. It actually holds the top of that foot in place, so it means that it doesn't slide out properly, and you've got to make sure that you get it sitting in right. Now, pretty common with these later ones, I tend to find that they have a very sort of hollow feeling to them and hollow shelling, so I think that sort of is a bit of a minus for these particular figures. And well, I've got it here. Where it joins here, sometimes this doesn't slide into place properly. It's the same thing with the legs in here. It sometimes doesn't slide in the correct way, and it becomes very, very fidgety, so you tend to pry it off from the ball joints. You will see here it has that connector that allows it to be used as a leg or an arm in the larger combiners, like Menasor, which is kind of weird because I don't think Jazz was actually one of the Autobots that got used for the G1 episode where they pretended to be Menasor. There we go. So he's a good looking figure, but I think as they've streamlined it over the years, the toys have become a little bit worse off because they're taking away those good old implements. So like older figures, you probably would have seen like a slide out fist or a turn out fist that still had articulation. Unfortunately with these ones, because of how they've done these panellings here, the arms don't really extend that far back, and if you put him up with his shoulders like that, he looks weird. And because of how the shoulders and stuff are done, he doesn't have that sort of cross posability that we've got with some of the other earlier figures. So if you wanted a Jazz that actually implements the look at the same time as having good articulation in it, you'd probably want to go and track down a Transformers animated series Jazz. Now that Jazz didn't come with a gun like this one does, and doesn't have the shoulder cannon like the original figure either. He came with nunchucks, but the thing with that particular line is they were really good at hiding the robot modes within the vehicle mode and the vehicle mode with the robot, so that they were well meshed together, which is something that they've sort of, I think, lost over the years. I guess going through the issue of adding in all the gimmicks that we're seeing these days, and this being Power of the Primes, we've gone through Combiner Wars to Titan's Return and then Power of the Primes. It's sort of like they're still using ideas from figures that came out 5 years ago, sort of thing, and they're not building upon the advancements that they're making. They're going backwards, and sort of, it's like with the Star Wars figures, we were getting really good articulated figures, and then suddenly they went back to the 5 points of articulation figures. And I think that the lack of having like a heat rub symbol or an Autobot symbol on the shoulders sort of detracts from him, because he ends up looking like he's a very bulky bot with a very small head, and his articulation isn't fantastic because of those limitations that you see around the body. Now you can attach that prime armor thing onto his back, which is where I would normally put it, but I haven't put it there today. I believe it can attach to the front, but as a gimmick I thought it was very, very weird, and it's not really something I'm into, so I'm not going to show off that aspect of it. But Jazz is my favourite Transformer, and I try to collect any version of him that comes out. This particular one I couldn't actually find myself, and I was very lucky that a dear friend of mine up north found it in her toy stores, and she sent it down to me for my birthday. So I'm really, really grateful to her for taking the time out to go and search these things for me, and she's found other figures for me as well. So I'm an extremely lucky person to have her in my life. So although this isn't a great Jazz, he does fit in quite well with other series. Not so much with the Fall of Cybertron or War of Cybertron figures, as can be seen with this Megatron here, if I can keep him standing. you'll notice that Megatron is a lot more sort of bulky looking, more solid looking. Whoops, he did fall over. Murphy's Law, eh? I mean, he's a bit hollow in the back of the legs, but otherwise they've gone from having very sort of solid looking figures to more hollowed out figures, which is probably better for kids, really. You know, predominantly I would say that that's actually what they're made for, kids, not for us adult collectors. But he's Jazz, and as Jazz, I'm going to love him anyway. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope to see you next week. Please like and subscribe, and perhaps share it with your friends if you think it's something they'll enjoy too. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Bye.